Welcome to day one of our Spring Sport Field Athlete series on optimal recovery and performance. So recovery is an umbrella term. It requires a couple things. It requires optimal sleep, it requires optimal nutrition, and requires body care. Today we're going to focus on foam rolling and static stretching to focus on the body care aspect of it. I have Coach Bean with me today, who's going to take us through the most critical pieces that we can hit with mobility, foam rolling, static stretching, even if we're tight on time, that can help you improve your recovery from day to day between practices or games. We all know that feeling. Once you get 4 to 6 weeks into the season, we start getting a little beat up. We start our practice the next day on half a tank instead of a full tank. And that just snowballs through your week. And before you know it, you're playing your games at a performance level that might be 3/4 of what you started with at the season. So in order to be at optimal performance later on in the season, we need to get our bodies through the season. And in order to do that, again, we need to address it with a number of different components. So Coach Bean is a trainer with us here on staff, and we're fortunate enough to have her. Not only is she a great trainer, but she's pretty much an expert in field sports. She's played at all levels. She played at University of Maryland, won a national championship, was an All-American. She'll never tell you this herself. And she also played on the US team, so at the world level. She's also been a coach at the Division I level in college. She's been a coach and referee in high school and in youth sports. So she understands youth sports, collegiate sports, high school sports from all different aspects. Again, referee, player, coach. So she understands the demand that the sports put on the body. She understands the demands that coaches put on their athletes. And then now as a trainer, how do we address those things to manage our athlete health and performance? So Bean's going to take us through a number of different strategies that we can use, again, as an athlete, or if you're watching this as a parent or a coach, that we can integrate either at home or pre-post practice to just get our athletes to the end of the season with the same level of performance they had at the beginning. So follow along. We hope you get something out of this, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, Coach Bean, we have limited time, limited resources. What are the things that we want to address, or take us in order of priorities with what we can work on for optimal muscular recovery and getting rid of adhesions, getting rid of soreness, and decreasing injury risk while we're at it? Where can we start utilizing a foam roller and some static stretching techniques?
Well, I think we're going to start at the bottom of the body with the calf. Two things going on here. We would like to do muscle lengthening, so we can do that with our stretch. Good recovery there. Also, looking at range of motion in the ankle, gaining that for our run stride. We can do that with the stretch. Also helpful with the roll or the ball. We'll get to that in a minute. So just to kind of show you, when you're running and that leg goes behind you and you get some extension in your leg, you need this ankle range here. And we want this shin to be able to fall forward a little bit, angle forward a little bit. If that cannot happen because your calf is tight, then you're going to start doing and having compensations. Not good. So we want to stay away from those. So let's go on to the ankle stretch. I'm going to show you how I'd like you to do it. We're going to do a split stance. Hip width apart with the feet. This split can vary depending on your tightness, how lengthwise you want to go, how deep you want to go. But let's go leaning on a wall or a fixed object, split stance, hip width apart. Once you're set, I'd like you to look at your back foot. Make sure the outside of your back foot is straight. You need to be very meticulous with these cues. If this foot is not straight, it'll tend to turn in. We don't want that. That's not how we want the stretch. That's not how we want to teach the body to be. We want to be in good alignment. Next thing we're going to look at is the arch. I want you to make sure the arch in your foot is up, just in front of the heel. From the inside, I want you to lift up a little bit. Make sure your big toe stays on the ground there, okay? Then we're going to go up to the hips. I want to make sure the hips are square to the wall or to your fixed object, meaning they're straight on. We don't have any side to side angles. And I'm also going to make sure the hips are level, which means they're straight across. We don't have one side up or one side down. Okay, with that said, it looks something like this. Make sure you relax the shoulders when you're pushing in. Good there?
So we've got a static stretch for that ankle joint, so that's going to help our range of motion. And we're obviously running mileage in practices and in games, so that adds up. So great for recovery too. What else can we do in that area? What's another recovery tool that we can use?
So if we look at some foam rolling or using a ball to get a sort of massage type effect on that muscle that might be tight or have some tight areas to it. So let's look at that now. I'm going to use the roller first. I'm going to sit on the ground. I'm going to put my calf, middle of my calf on that roller. Okay? Middle meaning I'm not going to tilt to the inside. I'm not going to tilt to the outside. I want middle of the calf in the back. To get a little pressure for me, I'm going to cross my leg over and get a little pressure on there. Pressure point is the key here. We don't feel like you need to roll. You can move about 1 inch per second on a roll, but don't feel like you need to roll. Find a tender spot and hold on that spot. If you want to tilt a little side to side to see if you have any tenderness, a little to the right or a little to the left, that's fine. Same thing with up or down. Feel, you can just move a little bit, see if there's any tenderness. Hold with some pressure from your other leg, and that should take out some tightness. Let it release.
Okay, now the foam roller versus the massage balls, or if you don't have access to a foam roller, talk us through the difference. Is there a difference in feel? Is there a difference in effectiveness? Is one better on one area than another? Or, hey, if you're stuck and you just have one, can you get it done anyway? Is it still useful?
If you don't have a foam roller, a ball is a great tool. Actually, I like a ball better. I think it sort of pinpoints some of the, an area more. So if you do have a kind of a knot, it might be really good to go after it with a ball. Same principles, take the ball, looking and finding those tight spots. Right there's a tight spot for me. I'm actually rotated slightly to the outside of my calf right now. You can see my foot angle a little bit there. And if you need more pressure, again, you feel free to cross over. I probably don't need more pressure there because it's pinpointed. So, this is fine for me. Hold, let it release, maybe move a little bit, try another spot.
We need hip extension. Yeah, how are we going to do that? And how are we, as athletes, aware that we might be restricted there versus have range of motion? A lot of times if we don't have the body awareness, we can just move to get the job done instead of being aware of body positioning with running with hip extension. So when we're doing a stretch for this or trying to get range of motion, take us through body positioning and what we're trying to keep still and what we're trying to move.
For that, I think this kneeling hip and quad stretch will do the trick. I'm going to go down on one knee. Place my other foot out in front about 90 degrees. I like to be up on my toes in the back, just a little height there. And what we want to focus on is everything being straight. This foot, this toe, this knee, this leg. Same thing with the back. Everything facing forward. And then I want you to go to your hips. Check your hips. Make sure they're level. The tendency can be to tip those hips a little bit. Make sure we're level here. Once you're all set with that, I want you to go to your pelvis. I want you to take your bottom of your pelvis and try to pull it forward and let the top, rock back. Okay, again, pelvis. We're going to try to just tip the pelvis and the pelvis only, not the back, not the spine. Tip it forward at the bottom, let it rock back at the top of the pelvis, and I get a nice pull, stretch right through the quad, up even into my hip there.
That's great. That clarity is huge on this exercise or this stretch. And I think it helps for people to understand that our quad attaches to the front of our pelvis.
Yes.
And as we see this, this common error with this stretch, people lunge really far forward and they're tilting their pelvis the wrong way. They're tilting forward, hyperextending their back, stretching their abs, and they're missing the joint that should be moving because they're moving all the joints above it, right?
A lunge forward and then trying to tip the pelvis, and it doesn't tip because I don't have enough range here and I go into my spine. So don't feel like you need to lunge forward. And what I want is for you not to lunge forward until you get that pelvis in place. Okay, so think about you're just kneeling, your legs are bent 90 degrees, you're here, you're all square, straight, level. Take the pelvis, tilt it first. Hold that tilt. And then if you feel like you can lunge a teeny bit, maybe, that's fine. Do not lunge before that pelvis tilt, okay? Otherwise, you're gonna get this and you're gonna get the spine extending because you don't have the range.
Okay, so we need our hip extension. We've addressed that. Let's say we don't have our hip extension and we haven't been working on our mechanics, right? So we have an altered movement pattern when we're running. So if we can't drive our legs straight back and we don't have the range needed, we're going to change the geometry, right? We're going to compensate through our pelvis. We're going to have some internal hip rotation. If those things are happening, those compensations are leading to some adhesions in other areas, some tension in other areas. Can you talk us through how to address that?
Using our rollers and our balls to do a massage type technique on our legs. I think one of the key areas that we find in the gym here that over and over is super tight is a little bit of what we would call a lateral quad. And to find that lateral quad, I think, not right down the center of the leg, not on the crease of the pant line right down the side, but somewhere in between, right in the center there. You can kind of go from your pelvic bone here that's kind of pointy and go straight down. That's what we're going to try to roll on the roller, okay? So in doing that, I'm going to lay on the roller. I'm going to be on my elbow. A couple things here. I want you to try to keep your elbow under your shoulder. I also want you to try to keep your shoulders and your hips square and in the same plane. For instance, I don't want your shoulders turned and your hips facing the ceiling. I want you nice and square, so try not to have that rotation in your spine. All right, so once you have that, I am, again, rolling down that sort of outer part of my quad, just down from my pelvic bone here, and I'm going to roll 1 inch per second. Just nice and slow. I can feel some tenderness there. You can use your hands. You can use your other leg to take pressure off if you need. We do want a good bit of pressure here. Not in agony, but feeling some, tension or tenderness there. Okay? Up and down 1 inch per second. Any what I call hot spots where you feel super tender, I would like you to hold on that. Try to let it release. Try to let that muscle tension release there. One other thing that we want to talk about while you're on the roller is a little bit of guarding and muscle tension. We want to try to let that go on the roller. So we don't want it too harsh, but we do want a nice amount of pressure, but we also need to be able to relax the muscle a little bit so you can penetrate and get in there and get that massage type pressure on there. Sure, if you don't have a foam roller, you can certainly try to use a ball. Balls are going to be more pointed, and what I mean by that is it's going to be more pressure in a smaller area, so a little bit more painful. So you got to be able to make sure you can handle that and still let the muscle relax enough to penetrate and let that muscle release. I can use a ball on my quad here. I'm looking for the same line that I did on the roller, not in the front, not directly down the side, but somewhere right in the middle, down from that pelvic bone there, okay? And if that's too much pressure for you, the only other, and we don't have one here, but the only other tool that you might be able to use is some sort of rolling pin to go down there. There's all sorts of rollers out there on the market, hand type rollers. You can use a rolling pin at home. That might be a nice way to work 1 inch per second. Same thing, trying to get some pressure down that muscle, up and down that muscle. Find those tender spots, hold on them if you can. You know, it's super important. Make sure you're taking care of yourself before and after your competitions, your practices.
Thank you so much, Coach Bean. We appreciate all the insight. We appreciate the transparency and the detail-oriented instruction you gave us all today. Coaches, parents, athletes, hopefully you got something out of today and you can implement this to improve performance of your athlete or yourself and your recovery from practice to practice and game to game. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to us on YouTube, where Peak Custom Fitness Solutions, you can just search it, or it'll be at the end of this video. You can also see us on Instagram TV, or go to our website at www.haveyoupeak.com. See you guys in about a week when we post our next piece. Thanks for tuning in.